Easter. Many churches, people get together. Millions and millions of people celebrate Easter. I will be celebrating Easter myself. Tomorrow, my church is putting on a big event. You might have seen it on Facebook. We've been promoting it lately at the Syllabs Arena here in town. We're gonna have an Easter egg hunt for the kids. We're gonna have bouncy castles, you name it. We're also gonna have a message from our pastor. Should be a really good time. I think some pizza. They didn't ask me to bring my candy cane machine, but I don't know. I might be doing that too. So this evening, I want to talk about why I believe in Easter. But first, before I talk about why I believe in Easter, I want to give some background what Easter is all about. So Easter is all about this guy named Jesus, and he was a Jewish rabbi who lived about 2,000 years ago. You can read about him in the Bible. He was a great guy. The people loved him a lot. And they enjoyed his teachings. He was a man of the people. People really appreciated him as a teacher and as a religious figure. But there were certain people who did not like him. In fact, they hated him. They were the religious leaders of the day. And the religious leaders hated him for a couple reasons. One, they hated him because he'd exposed their hypocrisy. They were doing some things that he didn't appreciate. They didn't treat their families right. They tried to put all these extra rules on people, and they did a couple things that he didn't like. And he was in their face a lot, and they didn't like that. He also was a really good debater. He would debate with them, and they didn't appreciate that as well. Some of the other things they didn't like about him is they had these shady business practices where people would come to the temple in Jerusalem. They had to pay a certain kind of fee, and they would have these guys called money changers. And what he did is he overturned tables and disrupted their business practices. What they would do is they would say, well, you're from Greece, so your Grecian coins, they're only worth so much, so you have to pay extra to get these temple coins. And so he did things like that really made them upset. So they conspired to kill him. They conspired to kill him. They worked with one of his disciples. You probably heard of Judas, and they worked out a deal where they paid him some money so that way he would betray them and show them where Jesus was hiding out so they could go and get their army and go capture him and put him to death. And that's exactly what they did. They put him to death. They put him on a cross. Now, they weren't allowed to legally kill people because they were in their city, Jerusalem, was inhabited by these people called the Romans. The Romans ruled the city, and they had control. And they were the only ones who were actually allowed to kill someone. And their method of killing people is called crucifixion. And crucifixion is extremely painful. They would nail your wrists to a cross. They'd nail your feet, and they'd make you hang there for a long, extended period of time until you passed away. And that's exactly what they did. And when he was on the cross, they made it even worse. The religious leaders, they were yelling, they were taunting him, and they were making fun of him, and they're saying, oh, if you're this great, you say you're the Son of God, why don't you come down from there? Just let yourself down. Because that was the other thing they didn't like about him. He didn't just say he was the Son of God. He actually claimed to be God himself. That didn't go over well. In fact, I've often told people that if I was living at that time and I was a religious person, I probably would have been mad at him too. I wouldn't have liked him as well. But I do believe in him. I believe in him for several reasons. And I want to talk about two reasons, but I want to read some poems in the Bible. And I'm not going to read the whole poem because some of them are a little bit long. But I'm going to read these poems, and I want you to think of some of the stuff I talked about Jesus. And if you already know the story of Jesus and his crucifixion, some of these things might sound familiar in this poem about Jesus. The first one starts with, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me? From the words of my groaning. Oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but I find no rest. And I'll skip down a bit. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by mankind and despised by the people. All who see me mock me, and they make mouths at me, they wag their heads. He trusts in the Lord. Let him deliver him. Let him rescue him, for he delights in him. I'll skip some of it. Many strong bulls encompass me. Strong bulls of Bashan surround me. They open wide their mouths at me like a ravening and roaring lion. I am poured out like water. All my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted within my breast. My strength is dried up like a potsherd. My tongue sticks to my jaws. You lay me in the dust of death. For dogs encompass me, a company of evildoers encircle me. Get this, they have pierced my hands and my feet. I can count all my bones, but they stare and gloat over me. They divide my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. But you, O Lord, be not far off. O you, my help, come quickly to my aid. Deliver my soul from the sword, my precious life from the power of the dogs. And there's more to the poem, a little bit farther down. Actually, no, I'll go to the second one. So that's part of the first poem. I'm going to read another poem from the Bible about this event, the crucifixion of Christ. Behold, my servant shall act wisely. He shall be high and lifted up, and he shall be exalted. As many were astonished at you, his appearance was so marred beyond human semblance, his form beyond that of the children of mankind. So shall he sprinkle many nations. Kings shall shut their mouths because of him. Which has not been told them they see. I'll go down a little further. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way. And the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that is before his shearers, he is silent. So he opened not his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people. And they made his grave with the wicked, and with a rich man in his death, although he had done no violence. And yet there was no deceit in his mouth. Yet it was the will of the Lord to crush him. He has put him to grief. When his soul makes an offering for guilt, he shall see his offspring, he shall prolong his days. The will of the Lord, shall prosper in his hand. I'll finish there. One more part. Therefore I will divide with him a portion with the many. He shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul to death, and was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he bore the sin of many, and makes intercession for the transgressions. Now, as Christians believe, Easter is the biggest holiday of the year for Christians, because they believe that we realize that we're all evil people. I myself, I'm an evil person. But Christians believe that if they put their faith in Christ, they can be saved from all their sins. Now, Jesus was a sacrifice. Christians believe that Jesus was a sacrifice. And we see in this poem how Jesus was the one who gave his life for many. He was a perfect son. He claimed to live a perfect life. And he also claimed to be the Son of God, that he was the sacrifice for the sins of the world, that all who believe in him could have eternal life. Now, the interesting thing I love about this, now, would we all agree that the poems I read, does that sound familiar to the teachings that you've heard about Jesus before? Show of hands, like those poems I read, do they sound like, if I were to ask you the question, who are those poems about, would you say, yeah, that's about Jesus? Would that make sense? Right? I would agree. The really cool part, though, about those poems is the first poem I read to you was written about 1000 BC. So that first poem was written 1,000 years before Jesus was even born. That second poem I read was actually written 700 years before Jesus was even born. I don't know about you, but that blows my mind. It blows my mind. They're actually prophecies. The first one's a song. It's called a psalm in the Bible, and it was written by a guy named King David. King David never had his hands and feet pierced. That never happened to him, but it did happen to Jesus Christ. The second one was by a prophet named Isaiah, and it was a prophecy about this future Messiah who would suffer for the sins of his people, which, if you know the story of Jesus, that's essentially the whole story of Jesus. Now, there's two major objections to this that people would say. So the first objection would be that, well, those poems must have actually been written after Jesus, and it was probably just substituted in there, and then now that's what Christians believe. Up until about 1950, that would have been the case. You could have argued that because the documents that they wrote the Bible on were only about from 1000 AD. So they would say, well, there's no way that that could be true. Until 1950, and we found what's called the Dead Sea Scrolls, in which we found copies of both of those poems that I read that were dated older than Jesus. So you can't use that argument. The second argument that people would say is, well, the authors, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they must have written their biographies of Jesus to coincide with those poems and the many there's more than two. I just used two of my favorite examples, but there's many more. You could argue that, well, those people, the authors, especially Matthew, fit that into his story. Now, I would argue that you can take that view, but the problem with that view is that the author Matthew and the other disciples who wrote the Gospels, the first 4 books of the New Testament, all of them died for their faith except for John. And tradition says that Matthew was impaled and had his head cut off for telling people about the story of Jesus. That's a pretty serious commitment to a guy who's making up a story. If he's making up a story, why is he going to go to the extent of death for this story, for his master Jesus Christ? So I'm not here to necessarily make you, try to convert you to become a Christian, but I do want you to think about it, and I'd like you to just, give it a try. Read the Bible, Matthew, Mark, the New Testament, give it a read. And I've heard there's a really good movie out right now called, I believe, The Case for Christ. I haven't seen it yet, but I know who the author is who wrote it, and he's a really good guy. So I suggest maybe give it a try and seek and have a look into the Bible and give it a good read. Thank you.